How the heck are you guys? I am Fastidious. Welcome back to the channel. Should you summon this weekend on the Setram Myca banner? Pretty interesting banner. It's the first time ever Micah has been on a raid up banner. That's because she was introduced last anniversary, summer 2024, as a permanent fusion, and only very recently was introduced as a pullable unit. So this is going to be the first opportunity to target her awakenings. Some people may have already pulled some dupes, but it's the first opportunity to ever target her awakenings. She does still remain in the game as a permanent fusion. So actually I'm on a friend's account right now. I'm doing a takeover, and yeah, you can see she's still here. So anyone pulling for Micah will be pulling for awakenings. We will break those awakenings down, but let me tell you, no one should be pulling. No one, literally no one should be pulling for Micah awakenings. We got it? We got that out of the way? Great. The only reason to pull on this banner, since you're guaranteed Micah from fusing, and it's really easy, is to get Cetrum or Setram awakenings. He is a very good hero, a much better hero than Micah. Both of these guys, by the way, are the two infernal marksmen we have in the game. So this is like our infernal marksman banner, and Setram has phenomenal awakenings. So he's really the unit that is far more relevant for progression and for the meta, and he's the unit you're going to want dupes of. So we're going to largely focus on him in this video. You may be wondering about this pretty spicy 2x by 20x banner featuring Zarus and Lucius. Oh yeah, and also Razak. That's on Saturday, so my video on that will come out tomorrow. That video will be pretty short and sweet. This is the one that I actually think we need to dive in on. Again, this will be pretty short as well, but Setram is super relevant still, particularly in Abyss 1 right now, so certain players might want to summon on this banner. I think the vast majority of players should not. Let me get that out of the way now, mainly because of Micah and because of things that keep coming that are more and more OP, but Setram is still very relevant. So let's start there. There is no better way to break it down and kick things off with Setram than by going to Guild Boss 1 and going to Abyss 1. So if you are not yet at Abyss 1, Setram's still super relevant. He's obviously meta for Abyss 1. Let me move myself out of the way a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. But he is maybe the hardest progression carry besides like a multi-awakening Kagiri or Wukong. Hardest progression carry in the game for the early stages in Guild Boss 1. The way he just deletes the shields is extremely underrated. Still, over 2 years into this game, it is underrated because shield damage does not show in final damage. So if we just go over here, who are the top players in the world at, why are all these people doing Guild Boss 2? But let's just pop any of this open right now. All of this damage is the damage dealt to the boss that counts towards blood. None of this damage is the damage these units put off into the shield. If we go to Abyss 1, if we find any infernal team, we will find Setram. There he is. A lot of his damage, if we pop this open here, is kind of undersold because the damage into the shield doesn't count, and he's so good at that. Now you might be thinking, yes, you need that damage into the shield earlier on, and that's when he's such a hard carry. But here, all these units are such high awakenings, they're so capable, it's so endgame. He's probably not doing as much damage into the shield as you realize. Actually wrong. Yes, these guys, you know, a Kagiri could solo a shield, stuff like that earlier on in the fight. But with Setram, a really meta thing people are doing right now is they are having him fully solo the first and second physical shields. So that's the shield in phase 1 and the shield in phase 3. By doing this, you can save all of your blasting of ults with your other physical DPS, like an A5 Wukong or an A5 Kagiri, for the vulnerable phase post-shield. And that is how people are able to stack a huge amount of damage. So a lot of the reason this account is getting an 80k, where another account might be getting a 65k, maybe even less, is because they're unloading so strategically into the vulnerable phases, and that's one way that you can do it. And Setram is phenomenal for that. So while we're here, and then we'll get into Setram's kit, I'm not going to do a full breakdown. I've got guides on Setram. You can search it up if you want, or if you want an updated guide, let me know in the comment section below, and we can put that on the docket. But you can see, we got to address something here. The meta has very much evolved to be one of two things. The definitive meta, in my opinion, more broadly, is going to be a Watcher comp led by Ingrid, and an Esotericist comp led by Nastia. For crazy high scores, more and more, we're seeing that Nastia comp, that's kind of your magic side of things, paired with a Nightmare comp led by the recently buffed Rygar. So for these incredibly high scores, you see that a lot. So in these top 6, you'll see Nastia is present for all of them, and this is relevant because that Nastia Esotericis comp is kind of the other option when it comes to the Soul Cadence Cetrum comp that we're going to be discussing because Cetrum's on rate up. So in this top 6, you're going to see we've got 4 Nightmare comps, 3 led by the recently buffed Rygar, and then the 6th one here, the 4th of the Nightmare comps led by Tordor. We've got our 2 Ingrid comps. It's not till our 7th and 8th comps that we get these very typical, or what used to be extremely typical, still very typical for getting your 60K, Ingrid and Soul Cadence comps. And with those, you will always see Cetrum. So before we take that moment and talk about why Cetrum is in all these places, I do want to scroll a little bit more and just show you that, yes, the Soul Cadence comp is a definitive top tier comp for getting 60K, but actually for the top meta stuff, you can see only a 3rd appearance now in the top 15. If we keep scrolling, how long till we see it again? It's not saying it's not phenomenal. It is phenomenal, but they're only a 4th appearance now in the top 25. So when we talk about the best factions in Abyss and thus the best lords and how you build those teams, I would say, actually, unbelievably, to be honest, Infernal's probably 4th best. I would say Nastia and the Esotericist are the definitive top as the best magic option. Then number 2, I would say Ingrid and the Watchers. The Watchers, mainly Kagiri and Wukong, they are bringing the physical DPS, and then you get Ingrid to help with extra magic. Then number 3, I would say a Nightmare comp, very commonly led by Rygar. That's going to be your best pure physical DPS comp. And then in 4th, your 2nd best straight up magic comp is going to be the Infernals. So let's do it. We've yapped enough. Let's talk about Cetrum. Why is he so freaking good? Let's go to the ultimate right now. With the ultimate, his big ass stance over here becomes this huge square, not relevant for boss content, but I think some people sleep on the fact that this is his ult range, and that is crazy. I think Brunor also has the range. I think it's just Brunor and Setram in the game. But when he ults, he's going to take a hot second, and a hot second indeed, to switch to the Fortress stance. The lag on that is crazy. And then he increases his attack range for 15 seconds. During this ultimate skill, he will constantly bombard targets with continuous attacks that deal 25% damage, and gradually he's going to increase his attack speed. The attacks are so constant and so continuous. If you have this fully skilled up, and then you eventually have his exclusive fully maxed out, and then maybe you have his Awaken level 5, this ult lasts forever, and so much of it he will spend with his attack speed at the hard cap in the game of 1200. He is truly a crazy automaton Gatling gun guy. And he reaches that attack speed limit, and he's going to enter Overloaded, where he boosts his damage. It's pretty spicy. So that's the key thing, his ultimate. Also, everything during his ultimate is registered as a basic attack, so Infernal Roar is a great set for him, though there's a lot of ways to build him. Speaking of that exclusive artifact, just using this guy over here, you can see his ult duration is extended by 7.5 seconds when this is at max promo. It already starts at 5 seconds additional when it's at base promo. So you're going from 15 to 20 seconds. And then if you have it maxed out, you're going from 15 to 22.5 seconds. And then if you do have his A5, we'll talk about Awakenings in one moment, you get an additional 5 seconds on that ult, so it will last 27.5 seconds. Final 2 things we have to talk about before the Awakenings, because the A1 and the A5 are very relevant, are these 2 passives. First off, he is going to deal extra damage to shielded targets. In general, at max skill ups, he deals 15% extra damage, but he will deal another 50% extra damage if the target's under the shield. So much of his damage in the final result page, since shield damage doesn't show up there, is obscured by how much he's unloading into the shield. If you turn on the live stats on the right side of your screen over there during a Guild Boss 1 battle, that is showing the total damage in the battle, including damage into shields, and you'll see Cetrum's damage is always much higher than the way it looks at the end when you go to the stats page. This is very strong. Another thing for progression, let's go to the second passive now. This is still relevant deeper into the game, but certainly when you start out, this is very cool. You can max out this very powerful stacking effect from his Annihilation passive in any single target battle very quickly. It's very good. Whenever Setram attacks any one target multiple times, each hit, he is going to increase his crit rate by 1% and his crit damage by 2% for 5 seconds. He's never switching targets, so these will reach 22 stacks, which is the cap at full skill ups, and he will maintain those stacks forever. So you're talking 22% additional crit rate and 44% additional crit damage. This is really nice, especially when you're early on. You can build Setram with 78% crit rate once you have the skill maxed out, and it's really neat. And even if you don't have it maxed out, right, you only get 7 additional stacks, so you can build him at 85% crit rate to begin, and you'll get 15% additional. So very, very good in a lot of ways, both for progression and deeper on in the game. He's also very good outside of Guild Boss 1 when it comes to progression on very young accounts or accounts that are struggling with Void Rift. The final things with Setram I want to discuss are his awakenings, namely his A1 and his A3. Because I think a lot of people that are deciding whether or not they want to pull on this banner very well may have Setram already, but they don't know if the awakenings are worth it. If we start with his A1 over here, this is probably the #1 most relevant one. It is kind of the same exact thing as what Vorn does at his A1. So if you think of why Vorn is so powerful, there's a bunch of reasons, but part of the reasons is A1. Similar story with Setram. When he enters the Fortress stance, this is when he ults, he grants Shield Break, which is a buff to the 2 allies with the highest current attack within his attack range. Typically, all allies will be in his attack range. It's a huge attack range, so likely this will be your Kagiri and your Sun Wukong or something like that in Abyss 1. And with that Shield Break buff, for 15 seconds, they will have increased damage dealt to shielded targets. So this is really good for taking shields down very fast. You get to that vulnerable phase faster in content like Guild Boss 1, especially Abyss 1, and thus, in turn, you put up much higher scores. At the A2, 300 additional attack, that is pretty good. He has very high attack for a marksman, but in general, not that high, at just under 4,800, so this puts him over 5,000 base attack, incredibly high for a marksman. At A3, he's going to increase his damage by 3% for each tile between him and the target. It's not that much. This is kind of a throwaway awakening in my opinion. A4 will take some penetration, but then A5, the duration of Overloaded, now lasts for 5 seconds. So this can be really relevant with that min-maxy stuff later on, or for progression, just unloading a lot more damage. Remember, he enters Overloaded once his attack speed reaches the limit. This happens pretty early on into his ultimate. Because Overloaded is getting advanced 5 seconds, effectively his whole ultimate is. You can think of it that way. So he's going to have the extra 5-second benefit of Overloaded on top of the whole duration of the ultimate. You can think of the ultimate lasting 27.5 seconds if you also have his maxed out exclusive artifact. Without it, you can think of it lasting 20. If you have the base promo, you can think of it lasting 25. You get the picture. But that extra duration is pretty dang spicy because obviously when he's done ulting, he kind of breaks down and he's in a, what do they call it actually? Here we go, a self-repair state for 8 seconds. So you delay that 5 more seconds, and really you can just have him in that Overloaded hyper state longer. So this makes him very, very good at min-maxing and soloing shields or just dealing tons of damage into shields. So you can start your ult a lot earlier in something like Abyss 1. So by the time the shield goes up, he's already at max attack speed. He's already in Overloaded, dealing the extra damage, putting out crazy amounts of hits with 1,200 attack speed, 1,200 attack speed, and you can really have him solo that stuff early on. And it's pretty phenomenal. Combine that with the A1 when you need your other physical units like Kagiri and Wukong unloading into the shield. It's a very good kit he has, and it's very well designed for shield content. And obviously the hardest shield content in the game right now is Abyss 1. So who should be summoning for Setram? If you absolutely love him and you're very early on, he's a very high-end progression unit, so he is a hero you could consider going for. Aside from that, I think everyone should hard skip until you're hyper-focused in Abyss 1. So if for some reason you're deep in the endgame and you don't have him, or you're missing key awakenings, I think it's worth consideration. That being said, if you do not have Soul Cadens, this is a non-starter. So that's kind of the point I wanted to arrive at. If you're just about to get a 35K or just about to get a 60K, maybe a 22K, and you think Setram is the answer to elevating your Soul Cadence comp, or you think A1 Setram is the answer, maybe A5, but realistically, A1, then yeah, you could consider it. But if you're a free-to-play or even a low spend, unless you're in that unbelievably specific situation where like you have every piece except for Cetrum and you're running a Soul Cadence comp, I just don't see how at all it is worthwhile. So like I said, if you're very early on and you just love him because he's insanely cool, pick him up. He's a great progression unit. But the fact that he's paired with Micah, who you can see I spent very little time in the video talking about, there's just no reason. You're guaranteed to get her for free from the permanent fusion. And if we look at the awakenings, they I'll bleep all of that out, but they really do. And I did not appreciate this post. Usually these posts are pretty honest from the game news where they break this stuff down. They'll have, you see war cabinet members go over this stuff. This analysis, no offense to the person who did this analysis of Micah's awakenings is insane. None of this is true. Like 5 stars to get 150 attack speed for 5 seconds when enemies are shielded. I mean, is this real life? These awakenings are not good. They're calling it here 12.7%. Whether it's 12.7% or frickin' 2%, I don't think it matters. I don't think you realize how weak 150 additional attack speed is. You're talking like maybe 1 additional hit over those 10 seconds, maybe 2. That's not enough to be relevant. I think this is such a useless awakening. Useless is not true. It's such a fine, mediocre A1. To call this 5 stars is outrageous to me. You're talking about a 12.7% damage gain over very brief moments in a fight. I mean, how is that worth 5 stars? Plus 300 base attack, this should have had the higher stars. This is what everything in her kit's scaling off of, and she is not like Cetrum with sky-high base attack for a marksman. She's sitting at 3725, pushing over 4K. That is a lot more relevant for a lot more content. If we look at here now, this A3, oh my God, this A3, what are we even talking about? Conflagration guarantees a crit hit. This is like a tiny effect within her entire package. Like when she has Blazing Plume and she hits a target inflicted with burning, then it's a 50-50 chance she does Conflagration. So with all those conditions, you're going to make a build where you don't crit cap her. She's going to be crit capped if you're using this. Completely and utterly useless awakening. 5% penetration, not even 8%. It's whatever. And then finally at the A5, during the ultimate, increases the chance of Conflagration to 100%. So yay, guaranteed crits during the ultimate. And obviously Conflagration has extra damage. All in all, just not good awakenings. They're calling this 5 stars. This is definitely her best awakening at A5, but no one's going all in for an A5 Micah. If it is 25% increased damage, that's phenomenal. That's really powerful. I still wouldn't give it 5 stars compared to some of the other awakenings in the game. It does not deserve a max rating. This is probably a 4-star, 3.5-star rating. This is probably a 1-star. This is probably a 0-star. This is probably a 2.5-star. And this is probably a 2-star. If you want. Like, the awakenings don't move the needle much. They're nothing you should summon for. I know I'm kind of ranting now, but TLDR, no one should be pulling for Micah because you get her for free and her awakenings are insignificant. In general, as a character, she is entirely irrelevant. So you're basically gambling on this banner, trying to pick up a Setram or 2, right? Unless you're in that very specific situation I talked about where you're a Soul Cadence owner and you're hyper-focused and you're ready to take a chance and go for Setram, please skip this banner. There you go. The banner is live as a divine summoning banner for the whole weekend and an invocation banner. I can show you that here. So on this banner, you can use your rare summons and your diamonds. On the others, you can use your divines. There's absolutely no way I think you should use your rare summons and diamonds. Even if you're in that specific situation, I think just wait. Maybe you'll get Setram with a nascent, or maybe his stone will come in the awakening shop. There's just no reason. With the divines, you could talk me into it for those very specific few. And there you have it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Fastidious. If you like my stuff, please do subscribe to the channel, share with your mother, and I'll see you real soon. Bye.
Fastidious.